A sea of opportunity. As we stand here at the edge of the Western continent looking into the New World, we think of where the Portuguese navigators of old discovered all of the wealth and opportunity and innovation beyond. But they also encountered great danger. A little bit like the opportunities that DePIN provides us today. Great potential, but many hidden threats. In today's episode, we're going to try to keep you from sinking your crypto ship on this episode of the DePIN Hub Weekly Recap. Welcome back to the third installment of Decoding DePIN. In this week's episode, we will bring you DePIN's future potential, but also those hard truths that reveal its underlying risks. In the last 2 weeks, we mapped out how to define a true DePIN and also how to separate the great from the good. But in this week, we will dive into some of the challenges that all of these DePINs face if they are to live up to their potential to rewrite trillion-dollar infrastructure markets.
Oh, I like money. Yeah, I like money though.
But before we get there, let's have a little check with what was happening in the news. So, it was a big week, the past week, for node sales. Namely, our friends at Huddle01, they opened their whitelist for their upcoming node sale. That happened on October 24th. And guess what? The sale is now on, so you can check it out yourself. And by the way, there might be a little discount for you known as DePIN Hub 10. Check it out in the description. You can get 10% off your Huddle01 node, and we might have something cooking up to help you manage those nodes too. But we won't be dropping that announcement quite yet. And speaking of node sales, our friends at Mawari, the decentralized content distribution network for AR and VR, also announced a limited node license sale, which is upcoming. They made that announcement on Halloween, so be paying attention for that. Lots of nodes dropping like it's hot in the world of DePIN. Now, speaking of DePIN, we will look at why DePIN is the future, but some of the underlying risk that could jeopardize that. Specifically today, we will cover why traditional infrastructure networks are fundamentally broken and the opportunity that DePIN provides, but also not where DePIN is succeeding, but also where it may fail, and how to spot these challenges before they surface so that you can protect your bags and stay afloat in that ever tumultuous DePIN sea. And ladies and gentlemen, soon, very soon actually, like by the time we've released this video and you're watching this, we'll have unveiled something that will bring the entire Decoding DePIN series together in the form of a new feature on DePIN Hub, an initiative to make your project assessment process as easy as stealing candy from a blind baby.
I'm just gonna take this.
We like babies here at DePIN Hub, but we don't think they should be involved in investing in crypto yet. Now, the problem with traditional infrastructure networks. First and foremost, traditional infrastructure's billions in CapEx and ongoing OpEx is simply unsustainable. It's hard for innovation and competition in industries that require literally tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars in investment simply as table stakes. Think about telecom. $100+ billion in spectrum license costs every year. And guess what? At the end of the day, it's the consumer that pays the bill.
This is how much we pay for electric?
Well, yeah.
DePIN, on the other hand, allows us to split the CapEx and most importantly, that ongoing OpEx across a community, which in turn is able to share in the rewards. Bureaucracy. We all love bureaucracy. Bureaucracy bleeds traditional infrastructure dry. What happens when you remove the 17 committees and that pesky and somewhat angry receptionist that will never let you get a hold of the boss? Where is my official company stamp?
Wazowski, you didn't file your paperwork last night.
Seal no more. We've moved on to the age of smart contracts and instantaneous on-chain settlement for matching things like demand for compute with idle compute resources in networks like Akash or IONET. Do you need to verify your telecom coverage? You can do so automatically using proof of coverage. And why not proof of location? Proof of stake, proof of vape, proof of literally anything.
Technology!
That's why DePIN's cool. But It's more than that. It's also about avoiding single points of failure. Single points of failure make traditional infrastructure risky. Think about if you're building a mapping network and your vehicles require $500,000 plus LiDAR equipment on top of them, how many of those vehicles can you deploy? And how many times can you redeploy them to refresh maps on those same roads? A distributed network reduces these bottlenecks. And it also makes each node transparent on the blockchain and allows you to capitalize on almost endless redundancy. Legacy infrastructure, it just can't keep up with the modern pace of innovation. We're moving fast, people, real fast. Meanwhile, plenty of telcos are still maintaining copper lines that actually existed from the last century. And let's not even get into electricity distribution, where the core underlying technology is often 100 years old.
And there's evidence of it.
Hello there.
But if you're a monopoly, what incentive do you actually have for change, other than the cons associated with all of the costs and the risks? Not to mention the bureaucracy, there it is again, involved in the change management. Plus, if you've already sunk billions of dollars into your infrastructure, you're going to want to milk every last drop of ROI before you start thinking about upgrades. Now, it appears that DePIN can provide solutions to many of these underlying problems in traditional infrastructure. And although we do love DePIN, we're also here to be objective, and we know, just like you do, that DePIN has its own underlying challenges. First and foremost, many DePIN projects are solving infrastructure problems that might not actually be problems at all, or they're creating solutions that are more complex than the original problem. If you're going through a project's white paper and it seems like they're spending multiple pages just trying to convince you on the problem itself, that might be a red flag.
We're trying to solve the problem here, Billy.
Not like this, you're not. You're not even looking at the problem.
We're very aware of the problem. I mean,
Okay, good. What's the problem?
You can take something where it even seems obvious. Markets where DePIN seems like a perfect fit, but there's still underlying challenges. Think about decentralized wireless. Is it really decentralized when you're relying on one frequency band, such as CBRS, that's actually subservient to other users in the network, such as the US Navy in the United States, and you're also relying on a centralized ISP to actually provide the backhaul in the core network. So speaking of networks, and DY in particular, this brings up another very critical challenge that all DePINs will face, which is network coordination, or as we say, the network coordination nightmare. This was actually the inspiration for Hotspotty's original product, our Helium Hotspot Management app. As the Hotspotty team was deploying hotspots across the world, and the rest of the world was also following suit, everyone began to realize, hey, what happens when that neighbor puts up a hotspot right next to mine? It's affecting the rewards. Why not put it over there where the coverage is needed? But how do we communicate with one another? What about managing those rewards? What if you need to find a whole network of hosts? How do you know if they're maintaining good uptime? When it's time to pay them out, how do you do so in a frictionless fashion? If you don't solve these network coordination challenges, it's very hard for the network to scale. Take electric vehicle charging. Seems like a great use case for DePIN. Demand is outpacing supply. It's costly. You need to maintain it. But if you decentralize it, how do you also guarantee quality and uptime? It's a little bit like the Airbnb model, but even with Airbnb, which seems like a simpler use case, they also had to invest tons into customer support, dispute resolution, and security. Now, there are a lot of projects that are already taking charge, doing a good job. Some examples would be HiveMapper, with their usage of bursts to incentivize map data in certain critical areas, or GeoNet, who's been leveraging boosted hexes to incentivize GPS correction data in the areas where they're already selling demand-side customers. But what to do when the regions you need coverage in actually have no deployers at all? There's no amount of token incentives that are going to get someone to deploy something when there isn't someone there to begin with.
I'm sorry, Wilson! Wilson, I'm sorry!
This brings us into the concept of tokenomics and what we're calling the tokenomics trap. Tokenomics is a tricky thing. When you're dealing with DePIN, you're essentially dealing with traditional business, but now on top of it, you suddenly have to bring in your own team of economists and maintain an entire economy that also has to deal with fluctuating market conditions and all of the demands of your user base. If you're too generous in your initial token offerings, you can watch the yield farmers just come in and extract value from your network. But if you're too conservative, your network growth very quickly flatlines. And what about the challenge of navigating external market conditions? We all know that the crypto world is very subject to bull and bear cycles. If the token price is falling at the macro level, what does that mean? Are all of your node operators just going to pack up and leave? If the bear market looks like it will persist for 1 to 2 years, can you keep growing your network during that time, or does your growth begin to flatline? These, again, are problems that all DePIN projects will have to face at one point or another. The best projects aren't the ones that necessarily have the healthiest theoretical tokenomics in their white paper, but actually the ones who can demonstrate flexibility in their models, allowing them to adapt their emission schedules and their incentivization structures with new market conditions. You can think about this with improvement proposals. You might have heard of things like HIP, so the helium improvement proposal. DEMO has the same thing with DIPs. These are essentially governance mechanisms that allow your community to vote on necessary changes to improve the network over time. One critical HIP in helium's evolution was HIP 51, which actually changed helium from being a single network to a network of networks that allowed a separation between things like mobile and IoT. Now, growth and growing pains. You probably remember what it felt like to get that new tooth breaking in through your gums. Sometimes it's hard for things to grow. And with growth in DePIN, you end up with the quality scale paradox. The point is to grow and scale, right? That's one of DePIN's biggest benefits, is its lean and fast and low-cost scaling model. But maintaining network quality and consistency while you grow is no easy feat. Because the more you grow, the more opportunity for challenges arise, such as gaming. Or maybe you're relying on professional-grade deployers that are actually installing thousands of nodes in your network. What happens if one of them goes bust? Do all of those nodes suddenly go offline? You'll need to introduce more security, more verification, and more governance. While, of course, this is a good thing, it also adds inefficiency to your growth, and you start running into some of those same bureaucratic challenges that we talked about before with traditional infrastructure. And again, in traditional industry, sometimes you can engineer your way out of certain problems, but it's harder to engineer new solutions when your entire network is essentially independent, self-motivated operators that also need to understand and adapt to your new mechanisms. This is why education in DePIN is so important. And by the way, we might be dropping something related to just that. If you check out the menu on DePIN Hub, you might see a new feature. But we'll start talking about that in the future. But what about now? Right now, what's obvious is that DePIN has amazing potential, but it also faces a lot of challenges. And like you, we want to know what to do. What are the answers? Well, guess what? Our goal at DePIN Hub is to help you, our community, best navigate this promising ecosystem so that you can identify the best opportunities and enjoy the benefits of DePIN while also protecting your time and your bags. And that is why we've just unveiled the first industry standard for analyzing and evaluating DePIN projects. A new feature is dropping on DePIN Hub. And we're not going to talk about it in this recap. We'll talk about it in the next one. But if you follow our socials and subscribe to our newsletter, you'll get the alpha right in your inbox. What does it mean for you? Well, essentially, we've coalesced all of our experience in the past 4+ years working in the space, from deploying hardware to growing communities to building blockchain infrastructure and map explorer networks to actually investing our own money in these projects. And what we've sussed out is a means for you to save countless hours on due diligence, identify red flags before they become painful lessons to your bags, and help you increase your overall earnings, while at the same time supporting quality and standardization in this ecosystem, which will allow it to accelerate towards its goals of improving and decentralizing infrastructure for all of us. So, ladies and gentlemen, keep your eyes peeled to our socials and stay tuned for what we're dropping very soon. That wraps up the feature of this recap. But before I say adios, if you were paying attention to in the news, we were talking about upcoming node sales. One of them is with Huddle 01, and we actually had a podcast episode with the founders of Huddle 01 and Daniel talking about their upcoming node sale and how you guys can get involved. So check that out in the DePIN Hub podcast. Show Daniel some love. And for me, ladies and gentlemen, I will bid you adieu. That wraps up Decoding DePIN Part 3. Stay tuned for the big reveal next week. And until then, DePIN revolutionaries, stay decentralized.